Welcome back. You're still watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We go over to Kenya now. The Treasury has agreed to inject cash into Kenya Power and Kenya Airways in the financial year starting July 2022, citing the role of the two struggling firms in supporting economic recovery from COVID-19. No bailouts was allotted to the two firms in the current financial year, raising concerns about their worsening cash flow positions that could hurt operations and slow down recovery in the economic activity. Well, Kenya Power and Kenya Airways are two key fueling economic growth, and they also contribute to the creation of employment. And analysts believe they should be supported through cash injections in the budget. Now, what does this mean? What does it say about the Kenyan economy and the fiscal pressure in the country? We have Matt Kindiga, Associate Practice Lead for Sub-Saharan Africa, at Front of You, joining us to share his thoughts on that. Hello, Matt. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the program today.
Yeah. So what are this bailout to the airways and the power sector? What does it tell us about the state of the public finances in Kenya?
So certainly it is concerning because it suggests that the government has much greater fiscal liabilities than we previously assumed. So Kenya's fiscal position was already quite tight. It was one of the countries that we were most concerned about. If we look at the fiscal positions of governments across Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana is a country that we are monitoring very closely, but also Kenya. So certainly it suggests that there is less fiscal room that the government has in terms of maneuverability to support the economy. It also suggests that the government will be under greater pressure to cut spending, raise taxes, so introduce austerity measures. And this goes against the government's official plans of raising recurrent expenditure by close to 50% year on year through the next financial year. So in reality, we expect the government to achieve probably high single digits increase in real terms expenditure over the next year or so, but certainly we would expect infrastructure projects to suffer quite significantly as a result of this. The government has very little choice but to provide bailout funding to both Kenya Power and Kenya Airways, so we would expect these to be prioritized over other discretionary expenditure and infrastructure investment.
And to what extent will fiscal pressures affect the country's economic outlook?
So certainly, fiscal pressures, weak public finances are a significant risk for Kenya's economic outlook, together with the very weak domestic and global tourism industry. Those are the two main risks to the growth outlook for Kenya. And in our view, it will curtail, or fiscal risks, weak fiscal positions will curtail growth in Kenya. But I would emphasize that the private sector in Kenya has been surprisingly resilient. We saw a rebound in activity begin already in Q3 2020, and the private sector has benefited from a range of positive drivers. For example, very strong credit growth from commercial banks throughout the pandemic. We've also seen very strong export-orientated demand because of the rise in global commodity prices. So our view is that although public finances do raise or are a risk for the growth outlook and will curtail economic growth to an extent, we don't think they represent a fundamental risk to Kenya's otherwise upbeat outlook.
And how will business sentiment be affected by austerity measures over the coming year?
So certainly there is rising anxiety in the private sector. The companies that we advise, big multinational companies, they have increasingly expressed concern over higher taxes that they will face. So the government already raised the value-added tax rate back to its pre-pandemic levels as early as January. We would expect new taxes to be introduced, but it really does depend on the industry. So companies selling products that are considered discretionary or luxury products are probably likely to be more affected. We could also see a bit of a slowdown in the construction industry, which could affect sentiment, because if the government is prioritizing bailing out Kenya Airways, Kenya Power, infrastructure investment will suffer. So there could be a bit of a negative repercussion for infrastructure investment and the construction industry overall. So certainly some anxiety, although as I mentioned a bit earlier, most companies in the private sector are relatively confident about the future. So it's not their biggest concern at the moment.
All right, Mas, thank you so much for giving us some details and updates on Kenya's situation. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thank you very much.